Tonight, we're remembering how New York City helped shape the golden sound of 1970s R&B records built in crowded studios, late-night sessions, and neighborhoods where soul music was simply part of the air. And by the time we reach the final song, you may hear something familiar beneath the melody. The quiet heartbeat of New York itself. Let's begin with one of the records that carried the city's warmth across the country. Number 10. Me and Mrs. Jones by Billy Paul.
Me and Mrs. Jones.
Some songs don't arrive loudly. They slip into the room, settle beside you, and begin telling a story you weren't expecting to hear. By 1972, R&B had many voices: Detroit's precision, Memphis grit, Philadelphia elegance. But New York had its own way of shaping soul music, and records like this felt perfectly at home in the city's late-night atmosphere. The arrangement moved slowly, like a conversation after midnight.
Good day at the same cafe.
Piano chords hung in the air while the rhythm section kept a quiet pulse underneath it all. Nothing rushed. Everything breathed. What made the record unforgettable, though, was the way Billy Paul delivered the story. His voice didn't sound like a man boasting or confessing. It sounded like someone quietly acknowledging a complicated truth. One small detail from the recording still stands out. Paul insisted on leaving space between certain phrases, letting the orchestra answer him before he continued. Those pauses made the story feel more real.
Much too strong to let it go now.
Almost like the listener had walked into the middle of something private. For many people, this song played during the quietest parts of the evening. After dinner, after the house settled down, when the radio felt like a companion more than entertainment. And listening now, decades later, it still carries that same feeling, like a secret the night decided to keep. Number 9, Love Ballad by LTD.
Loving you gave me something new.
Some songs feel like they were written for a single quiet moment, the kind where time slows down just enough for a feeling to settle in. By the mid-1970s, New York's R&B studios had become gathering places for musicians from everywhere. Players drifting up from the South, bangers shaped by church choirs, arrangers who knew how to give a song room to breathe. Even when a group wasn't from the city itself, recording in New York often gave their music a different texture. Love Ballad carried that atmosphere beautifully. The record unfolded gently, almost cautiously at first.
So real.
Electric piano chords drifted across a soft rhythm while the melody moved with the patience of someone choosing their words carefully. And then came the voice. Jeffrey Osborne's delivery didn't sound like someone trying to impress anyone. It felt closer to a quiet confession. Smooth, steady, but filled with warmth that seemed to reach right through the speakers. One detail from the recording session still gets mentioned by musicians who were there. The producers kept the arrangement deliberately restrained, allowing Osborne's vocal to rise naturally instead of building a wall of sound around it.
There is much more than they could see.
The restraint became the song's strength. For listeners, this was the kind of record that filled living rooms during slow dances or late-night radio hours. It didn't demand attention, it invited it. And long after the final note faded, the feeling lingered. Sometimes the most powerful songs don't try to move the room, they simply move the heart. Number 8, Just the Two of Us by Grover Washington Jr. and Bill Withers.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try.
If the last song felt like a quiet conversation, the next one felt like a walk through the city on a warm evening. By the end of the 1970s, New York's R&B scene had begun blending soul with jazz in ways that felt effortless. Saxophones drifted into the mix. Rhythms became a little more polished, and the mood turned reflective rather than dramatic. This record captured that shift perfectly. Grover Washington Jr.'s saxophone opened the song like sunlight sliding between tall buildings. The melody was relaxed, unhurried, confident in its simplicity. Then Bill Withers stepped in with that unmistakable voice, steady, grounded, and honest. There was nothing flashy about the delivery. It sounded like someone speaking directly to the person sitting across from them. One small detail made the recording special. The rhythm track was intentionally kept light and airy, giving the saxophone space to glide while Withers' vocals settled comfortably into the groove. For many listeners, this song became part of ordinary life, playing during long drives, Sunday mornings, or quiet evenings when the world finally slowed down. And like much of New York's best R&B, it didn't try to overwhelm you. It simply stayed beside you. Number 7, Never Can Say Goodbye by Gloria Gaynor. Some records carry a quiet kind of strength. By the mid-1970s, New York's R&B scene was beginning to blur the lines between soul and the growing pulse of disco. In clubs across Manhattan and Brooklyn, dancers were discovering that emotion and rhythm didn't have to live in separate worlds. This song stood right at that crossroads. The opening carried a steady, confident groove, bass and percussion moving with a smooth determination that felt built for a crowded dance floor. But beneath the rhythm was something deeper. Gloria Gaynor's voice never rushed the story. She sang with the calm resolve of someone who had already lived through the heartache she was describing. One detail from the recording session still lingers in music history. The producers arranged the track as part of a continuous dance sequence, letting the music flow without interruption. That decision helped the record feel alive inside clubs. Where the night moved in long, uninterrupted waves of sound. For listeners, the song meant different things depending on where they heard it. In a club, it carried freedom. On the radio at home, it felt closer to reflection. But the feeling underneath stayed the same. Sometimes love doesn't disappear. It just learns how to live in memory. Number 6, Imagination by Gladys Knight and the Pips.
By imagination to think of.
Not every powerful record needed a crowded room. Some were made for quiet reflection when the music felt like it was speaking directly to you. By the early 1970s, Gladys Knight and the Pips were already one of the most respected groups in soul music. When they recorded in New York, the city studio musicians added a subtle polish, strings that drifted softly, arrangements that moved with patience rather than urgency. Imagination felt almost like a conversation unfolding in slow motion. The opening chords arrived gently, and then Gladys Knight's voice entered with that unmistakable clarity, warm, steady, and filled with emotional control. She never forced a note. She simply allowed the feeling to rise naturally. One small detail from the recording always stands out. Knight often sang slightly behind the beat, giving her phrasing a relaxed pull that made the words feel thoughtful rather than dramatic. For listeners, this was the kind of record that played during quiet evenings. Maybe when someone was alone with their thoughts. Maybe when two people were trying to understand something that wasn't easy to say out loud. And decades later, the song still carries that same calm honesty. Because sometimes the deepest emotions don't need to be shouted. They just need to be heard. Number 5, You Are Everything by The Stylistic. Some songs feel like they were built entirely out of tenderness. By the early 1970s, Philadelphia producers were crafting a softer, orchestral style of soul. But many of those recordings passed through New York studios and musicians. The city added its own quiet precision, Beshan players who understood how to support a voice without crowding it. You Are Everything unfolded like a slow sunrise. The strings drifted gently behind the rhythm, never rushing, never demanding attention. Everything in the arrangement seemed to lean toward one purpose, giving Russell Tompkins Jr.'s voice space to float. And that voice, light, delicate, almost fragile, carried the song with remarkable control. Tompkins didn't overpower the melody. He let it lift him. One detail from the sessions has become part of soul music lore. Tompkins often recorded his lead vocal standing slightly farther from the microphone than most singers, allowing his falsetto to soften naturally instead of sounding sharp. The result felt incredibly intimate. For many listeners, this song lived inside quiet moments. Slow dances in living rooms, car rides after sunset, or evenings when someone simply needed reassurance that love could still be gentle. And hearing it now, the feeling hasn't faded. Some voices don't age. They simply stay where we left them. Number 4, Ain't No Stopping Us Now by McFadden and Whitehead.
There's been so many things that's held us down, but now it looks.
If the last song carried softness, this one carried determination. By the late 1970s, New York had become a center for R&B records that blended soul, disco, and a rising sense of pride. Clubs were full, dance floors stayed alive until morning, and music was beginning to reflect a new confidence. This record arrived with exactly that spirit. The groove moved forward with steady purpose, bass and percussion locked together like a heartbeat meant for a crowded room. But the energy wasn't just about dancing, it was about movement. Gene McFadden and John Whitehead sang with the voice of people who had seen the struggle behind success. Their delivery felt strong but grounded, like a declaration rather than a celebration. One detail from the recording session still resonates with musicians. The producers kept the rhythm section front and center in the mix, allowing the groove itself to carry the message forward. Listeners felt that confidence immediately. For many people, this song became the soundtrack for moments of pride.
Ain't no stopping us now.
Graduations, long-awaited opportunities, or simply the feeling of finally moving past something difficult. And even now, the message still lands quietly but firmly. Sometimes progress doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives with a steady groove and the courage to keep moving. Number 3, Be Thankful for What You Got by William DeVaughn.
Just be thankful.
Not every record from the 1970s tried to shine. Some simply sat in the pocket, calm, patient, almost meditative. When this song arrived in 1974, R&B was filled with lush orchestrations and polished productions. But this record took a different path. The groove was stripped down. Bass, gentle rhythm, and just enough texture to let the message breathe. That simplicity made it feel perfectly suited to New York's late-night radio hours. William DeVaughn's voice carried the song with quiet steadiness.
A car at all.
He didn't sound like someone preaching or lecturing. It felt closer to a thoughtful reminder, offered with calm respect. One small detail from the session shaped the entire atmosphere. The producers intentionally left large pockets of space in the arrangement, allowing the bass line to guide the mood almost like a heartbeat. For listeners, this was the kind of record that played when the night slowed down. Maybe after work, maybe during a long drive home, maybe when someone needed a moment to think. And the message landed softly but clearly. Sometimes peace doesn't come from having everything. Sometimes it comes from recognizing what's already there. You know, If you're still here listening to these stories, you're probably someone who remembers these records the way we do. Subscribing helps keep these memories playing a little longer. Number 2, Best of My Love by The Emotions. Where some songs whispered, this one arrived with sunlight. By the late 1970s, R&B in New York had become brighter and more expansive. Studios were experimenting with fuller arrangements, horns, layered vocals, rhythm sections that felt built for both radio and dance floors. Best of My Love carried that joyful lift from the very first notes. The rhythm felt light on its feet, almost like it was smiling. Strings and horns stepped into the groove with effortless balance, creating a sound that felt wide open and celebratory. But the true magic came from the voices. The Emotions sang with a harmony that sounded natural, almost like sisters laughing in the same room. Their delivery carried happiness without exaggeration, just pure warmth moving through the melody. One detail from the recording stood out. The producers encouraged the singers to lean into the rhythm rather than float above it, giving the song its buoyant, almost dancing vocal feel. For many listeners, this record became part of joyful memories, family gatherings, summer evenings, and dance floors where the night felt full of possibility. And hearing it now still brings that same light. Because sometimes a song doesn't remind us of one moment. It reminds us that joy itself once felt easy. Number 1, Lean on Me by Bill Withers. Some songs outlive the era that created them. By the early 1970s, New York's R&B scene had become a meeting place for every kind of soul music. Church-rooted voices, folk storytellers, jazz musicians, and rhythm players who understood the power of simplicity. Lean on Me carried all of that in a single, unforgettable recording. The opening piano chords were almost disarmingly plain. No elaborate orchestration, no heavy production. Just a melody that felt as familiar as an old conversation. Then, Bill Withers began to sing. His voice had a grounded honesty that made every word feel lived in. He didn't decorate the lines. He delivered them the way someone speaks when they mean exactly what they say. One detail from the recording still resonates. The producers encouraged the studio musicians to join in on the chorus, creating that communal sound that made the record feel like a room full of people standing together. For listeners, the song became more than a record. It became something shared between friends, neighbors, families, and communities who understood what it meant to rely on one another. And decades later, the message still feels just as steady.
On me, brother, when you need a hand.
Because long after trends fade and sounds change, a simple reminder of human kindness never really goes out of style. Music has a way of carrying the places that created it. In the 1970s, New York City gave R&B something special. A blend of polish and street rhythm, rituals, reflection, and celebration. These records weren't just studio creations. They were shaped by neighborhoods, late-night radio stations, crowded clubs, and quiet apartments where the music played softly in the background of everyday life. If you lived through those years, chances are these songs were there with you in some small way. Maybe during a slow dance, maybe during a long drive, maybe during a moment you still remember. Thank you for spending a little time revisiting them. And if you'd like to keep traveling through these memories, there's another story waiting for you on the screen. One that opens the door to another era, another set of songs, and perhaps another piece of your own past. Whenever you're ready, it's right there. R&B legends who are rotting in jail right now.